Hello, and welcome to the first recording of Breaking the Stigma in 2020. So, I've done a few of these recordings as practice before the last set of talks I gave, and this is the first of another set of practices. I haven't given this talk in probably about a month, maybe 2 months now, so I'm just kind of running through it in my own head for my own benefit. But also you might as well see what I gain out of it and how I learn these things and how I prepare. So you're aware there is a little cat just down here called Pika. She may come and say hello, she may not, but she is watching me ever vigilantly. 2020 is a bit of a big year, mixed year, whatever you want to call it. I've got a book coming out, which is kind of surprising really, because I never thought I'd have a book. But I do now. Probably have more in the future, who knows. But really, it's just about, I want to make sure I deliver the best talks, the best book, the best everything that I can within my ability. And that's why I do these practices. That's why I do everything. And I do all of this not for me, not for my own benefit, not for fame, not for fortune, but I do it for the people that are in the position I was in, wearing a mask to work, pretending to be something that you're not, and yeah, I do everything for them. So please feel free to leave comments, like, subscribe, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Again, it's not for me. I don't mind what you do with this. It's purely to help the other people out there. So, let's hope this works. And it's not.
This is a
There we
fair
go.
question. I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager. If you will constantly remind yourself that some of my generation judges people by their race, their belief, or the color of their skin, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or blue sniffers.
So, I love having theme music. It's great. And this is a song by a band that I absolutely love called Less Than Jake. And it's called All My Best Friends Are Metalheads. And that's the introduction to it. And the reason I play it is because it aptly highlights a lot of the stigma we have already beaten and already overcome as a species. We used to judge people by their race, their belief, and the colour of their skin. And it wasn't right. But we have overcome that. And mental health is no different. And here, in Breaking the Stigma, I will go through why mental health is no different and how we should actually overcome it and the stigmas attached to it. So, I always describe myself as a person who lives a life of two halves. My name is Andrew Solkeld. I am a chartered accountant. I trained at PwC. I specialised in corporate finance. I've worked on millions of pounds of transactions across the UK and the world. And I since moved out of practice and into industry, where I became a business intelligence specialist. And I'm now an investor, finance director and owner at startups across Leeds. We have grand ambitions, and you may not have heard of us now, but you soon will. Hopefully that came across quite well. Maybe a little bit arrogant, but not too much. Interesting enough to make you want to know more. But I did say two halves. So here's the other half of who I am. My name's Andy. I live with depression. I have been suicidal at 3 points in my life. And have considered ending my life in the background many other times. I like chiptune music. I live with my cat Pika, who is down here. I like playing board games and card games. And I give this talk, and I've written a book on that. Even though we may sometimes feel like shit, it doesn't mean life is always that way. Now you tell me which one of those is more honest, which one's more open, which one's more true, and which one do you care about more? Because we always say the first one. We always introduce ourselves in our business capacity. But what about the person underneath? What about the people? Because that's where connection lies, and that's where I focus. So this is Breaking the Stigma. This is the talk with more false starts than Lord of the Rings has false endings. I always start this by saying a special thank you to the people that started this journey for me, because it wasn't a journey that I planned or a journey that I thought about. So a special thank you to Zenith from Chakra Corporate, who invited me to talk just over a year ago for the first time. And for people like Daniela Dowse at Squire Patton Boggs, who invited me to do a series of talks across the country for them. So I've got to put this slide in here because I do have a book coming out this year. It is called Life is a Four-Letter Word. It's a mental health survival guide for professionals, and my publisher would not let me get away with not mentioning the book. I'm really pleased with it. It is a legacy I am happy to have left the world with, a message that I hope rings true with anyone and everyone who reads it. As I've said at the start of this talk, none of it's for me. It's to give other people out there who may have felt the way I felt, who may feel that life is a four-letter word. It gives them the hope that even though it may be now, it may not be in the future, and that there are ways through it, and there are ways that they can make their way through it. And it may not be easy. I'm not saying that there is a fast way to do this, but it is possible, and I'm here, and I'm living proof that someone who lives with depression, has been suicidal, and struggles with things on a daily basis, that yeah, it can be shit, but I'm here and I'm going, and there's still hope for everyone else out there. So, as you will have also seen, I am using lots of memes in this presentation. I'm really glad Article 13 doesn't cover them, because otherwise it'd be really hard giving this talk in a room full of lawyers. Reason I like memes is, one, they're funny, but two, they're really simple and elegant. And mental health is a really complicated area to describe and to talk about. What my experience is no different. It could be completely different from someone else's. And that means what is said can be interpreted differently and can be felt differently. A lot of this is internalized in our heads and in our minds, and it's about what really goes on. And memes simplify that to hopefully make it accessible. The other thing is, I'm going to be talking about depression. I'm going to be talking about suicide, and these are really deep and really dark subjects. And memes bring some humour. And it is important to know that you can laugh about these things, that you can find joy in life. Couple of things that I need to say. I am not a therapist. I am not trained in any of this. I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist, any of that. Everything I say is based off my experience. There are professionals out there. You can seek medical help. I would greatly recommend that if you are struggling in any of the ways I talk about, that you do go speak to a professional in this area. I can just speak from my experience and what I've been through. And I hope that's enough to encourage other people to speak out and to talk. Another couple of things. I'm not going to mention names in this. I will be talking about bullying. I will be talking about struggling. But there's no need to mention names. This is not a witch hunt. Yes, these things are based off my past, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. They may have had the impact on me that they had, but that doesn't mean that they will have the same impact on you. I hold no ill will and no grudge against anyone or anything that gets mentioned in this talk. So, just as you thought we were about to kick into things, this is a slide that means a lot to me, and I will always have it at the front of this presentation because I think it's really important to remember why I do this, because I do come across quite well. I am eloquent. I know these things. I am good at talking. I'm good at writing. And people listen to me. I'm emotive. You may even warm to me as a speaker or as even a person by the end of this. But even though I come across as quite happy, quite confident, maybe that I've got my shit together, I really don't feel that way. I still feel like a failure. I feel I failed in everything I've done. I feel like a fake. I feel like a fraud. And yet somehow I've written a book on it. Yet I still don't believe that I'm successful in this area. So then the question is, why do I stand up here if I don't feel confident in doing it? And as I said, it's not about me. When I told people for the first time that I suffered from depression and that I had been suicidal, everyone said they didn't know. They never knew. They never understood, and that they wished they could have been there to help. And it wasn't that I didn't want them to help. It was that I hid it all away. It was that I put it underneath the mask that I wore to work, the mask that I wore to family occasions, the mask that I wore with my friends present. I hid it away and brought this upon myself. And I want other people to feel that they don't have to wear that mask every day. I want other people to feel they can bring themselves to whatever event or whatever occasion, or just to their daily lives. That's what I want to enable, and that's why I do this. So let's start for real this time. So, as a professional, lives can get quite busy, and this is something that always happened, particularly in time-focused environments like deals where there is a hard deadline when things need to get done. Something comes in, it needs to be answered quickly. And every time I thought I would be able to get away, be able to do something, or have a plan for the evening to enjoy myself or my time, stuff would come up, and that time would get taken away. A great example of this, great example of what comes as a result of this is I was once in an audit room. Yes, boo, hiss, I was an auditor. And I was invited out by some friends for dinner for my birthday. I know, guys can be really surprising at times. So I said this to the audit room. It's like, look, I'm leaving early. I'm going to go out for dinner with some friends for my birthday. And the response, and this I think really highlights the issues that we have inside professional culture is, what? You're going out for dinner again? You went out for dinner last night. Oh well, don't worry about it. We'll pick up the slack while you go have fun. Now hold on a minute. Hold on. It's my decision what I do with my time. It's not your decision. There's not a you can only celebrate your birthday once policy. You can celebrate it more than once. And then there's also that thick layer of passive-aggressive guilt that comes with it, where it's like, you're having fun and we're not, and that's not right. But anyway, you accept these things, you know what it is, but I needed to find balance in it. And so I did. I balanced away my life. And so I've tried to fit the model of being, the mold of being a professional. Now, not everyone will understand what professional services is like, so I'm going to give you a bit of a crash course. So, one, professional services can't really compete on the quality of their work. So, and the reason for this is a lot of what happens in professional services is regulated by the law and by various bodies that say this is what an audit requires, or this is what is required under this law, or a legal document needs to be produced that matches these criteria. And no matter which professional services firm you go to, I'm going to wager that most of those documents all end up looking very similar. Mostly because there are huge resources of pre-prepared documents that get used. But nevertheless, you can't easily compete on quality. You also can't easily compete on cost. And this is one that always confuses people. But you are a professional services body. You live and die by your people. And you therefore need to pay your people well. And as soon as you reduce the cost of your work, you actually infer that you are you devalue yourselves and your people, because suddenly you are not charging the appropriate time for them. So you don't often compete on cost, not that much anyway. Also, when going through training, and within the organisations, you also realise that they are fundamentally Darwinian. Okay? Now, it's survival of the fittest. You succeed or you get out, basically. And people don't like admitting this, but that is very much what it's like. If you fail your exams, you lose your job. If you end up, people get classified as career managers or career directors, as if that is their lot in life and that is all it is and all it ever will be. And as such, the Darwinian nature means that if you end up standing still or wanting to stand still or just not knowing where you want to be, you often get left behind. And the final point is, no one in this organisation, in professional organisations at all, is irreplaceable. Everyone can be replaced. And that is pretty harsh to realise. It's fine when you understand it, because to be fair, no one should be irreplaceable. The whole point of succession planning is that there is someone that can step into any appropriate position within a business, which is fine. But what you'll also see is, because of this, there is a lot of competition between the people there. There's an awful lot of competition amongst peers, amongst different peer groups, because everyone's vying for the same promotion. Everyone's moving up the ladder in the same direction. And because of this, there ends up being a lot of bullying. But when I say bullying, people are like, there's no bullying in professional services organisations. Yes, there is. It's just called banter now. Banter is bullying but rebranded for adults. And people don't like hearing this, but did you ask whether you could say that about someone? Did you ask whether there was something up at home and why they were late? Did you ask whether they're doing okay? Or did you just make the jokes? Did you just say, it's all in the name of banter? Because if you didn't check, then it's probably not right. And you should probably think more about the people that you're saying this stuff about. Because I suffered from it. I had lots of banter. I caved into it. I started giving banter back. But in hindsight, when you look at it all, it is still bad. Now, what you'll also notice is I am not the sort of person that fits the professional services mould. I mean, heck, I am sat here recording this at home, wearing a hoodie and jeans, and not giving a shit what anyone thinks about it. And because of that, I did suffer a lot of bullying. I'm not an old boy. I'm not a member of a rugby club. I don't know how to play. I don't watch football on weekends. I don't swing a golf racket. I just like being me. I like what I like. But because of that, I was ostracised. I was pushed to one side and made fun of because of it. The hobbies that people made fun of me because of, I gave up. The music that I listened to that people made fun of, I stopped listening to. And slowly but surely, I began to try and force myself into the mould. But just remember, just because it's not right for me doesn't mean it's not right for everyone. And it doesn't make it fundamentally wrong. Great businesses, in fact, great civilizations have been built on Darwinian culture. So remember, just because it's not it doesn't feel right doesn't mean it's wrong. It just might not be right for you. But anyway, don't worry about it. So what if you're out on the edges? Don't worry about it. Oh well, there was a typo on page 183 of the document. Don't worry about it. What about that rounding error in an equity schedule from one day? Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. What about only spending 2 hours reviewing an audit file of a FTSE 100 client? Oh well, don't worry about it. No, we care about our work. We put our heart and soul into the work we do, and every little thing we do, we worry about, and we get scrutinised for, because that is the nature of professional services. You live and die by your people, and it makes us constantly vigilant. So, when you can't compete by your cost or your quality, and you can't really compete by your people because you can't have too many loose cannons that don't fit the mould of what a client's expecting, how does a professional service organisation compete? Well, and you can hear it coming, you can taste the bullshit. We put ourselves in our client's shoes. We put clear blue water between us and the competition. We believe that velocity is more than distance over time. Yes, of course it is. Velocity is a vector. It requires direction. Physicist. What it all really means is we just do more work and we don't charge for it. And because we do more work and we are trying to expect what the client is, we end up in the same issue a lot of people have with their mental health, where they live in a world of expectation. They live believing, expecting that this is what they should do and this is how they should do it. And that leads to second guessing and questioning. But not only are you doing it, your boss is doing it and their boss is doing it. So when you're second guessing what your boss is saying, they're second guessing what their boss is saying. And suddenly they don't really know whether what's right and what's wrong. And you can go down the rabbit hole of spending 24, 48 hours trying to answer a really simple question that just needed a yes or a no. And the process is absolutely exhausting. But eventually you'll get to go home. Eventually you'll get to do what you want. Maybe not when you wanted to do it, but you will get to go home. And you will get to do what you want. Or you can go home and reflect on the day, as often happens. And you'll get back and you'll think, shit, there was a typo on page 183. Maybe I should have sorted that out. What if they interpreted this email this way? What if they thought about it this way instead? And then the rabbit hole that you were going down before carries on. And then, just as you maybe let go of it and think, you know what, I'll deal with it tomorrow. That blessed device, that device that connects us to everyone in a way that has been unheard of in our civilizations previously. It rings and you go, I know what it is. I know. Have you seen the typo on page 183? Fuck. So when you've got some time to yourself, when you've got that time, and here's a really good quote that, again, I have no idea where it comes from, but it's something that rings true. Why spend your entire working day, and I'm not using the actual quote which says 8 hours, because working days aren't 8 hours anymore. Why spend your entire working day working for someone else and then going home and not working on your dreams? Because that's the thing. We, as professionals, often give up and sacrifice. We willingly sacrifice our time and our dreams for our clients. It is an incredibly special relationship that we build. And we work hard. We work relentlessly and tirelessly. But because of that, and because it has become expected, and because it has become the norm, we often can't take a compliment when it's deserved. And a very common one for this is, thank you for your hard work. Thank you for putting in that extra time. And suddenly, well, maybe not everyone thinks this, but I know I certainly thought this at times. Do they think I'm weak and that I need this compliment? Do they think that I made the work hard? Do they think that the work was easy in general, but that I did something wrong? Do they think I don't work hard the rest of the time? Are they being sarcastic? And suddenly, that compliment, what should be taken at face value, gets turned into an undercurrent of, like, am I right? Am I doing this correct? Now here's another one. Let's take it out of the context of work. Here's a brilliant one. You look beautiful. You look really good. How many people have said that and been like, poof, it's probably just the makeup I'm wearing. Do they think I don't look beautiful the rest of the time when I'm not wearing makeup? Do they think that I'm vain and I need the compliment? Do they think, are they hitting on me? No. Sometimes you can just say nice things because you want to be nice. If I say you're beautiful, know it. Know that I mean it inside and out. So, lesson 1 of Breaking the Stigma. Say thank you, please. Because even though we as professionals or any business person or anyone working, even though we are rewarded, and we are rewarded well, there's holidays, there's pension, there's bonuses, whatever it is, whatever the reward package, people are rewarded well. But are they valued? And feeling valued is far more valuable than any money can ever buy. But this is where my failings took over. And I accept them as my failings. I took that questioning mindset a little step further. And it's not too hard to see it. I started questioning whether my friends actually liked me, whether they wanted to see me for me, or whether they just wanted to be around me because I could buy the first round of drinks, or because we'd been friends for so long that it was easier to just keep it going than to let it go. And slowly but surely I started questioning and retreating into myself. But worse yet, I took to question my family. Do they actually like me? I know they love me. There is an inherent love in family bonds. But do they like me? We don't like the same things. We don't have the same hobbies. We pass like ships in the night, not knowing what others are doing. We don't see each other that often. And suddenly you start beginning to question fundamental things, and you start thinking, this isn't right. It's just not right. So lesson 2, so soon after the first, I know. Stop saying you're fine when you're not. Stop saying, yeah, I'm okay, when you're not. We have emotions. We are one of the few species that has real emotional intelligence. And if you don't use it, you feel as good as being a robot, and you feel like something that is entirely purpose-driven and not emotionally driven. And when you have all your emotions gone and there's nothing else left, you end up here. And this is a very, very real scenario, because it's where I ended up. I had questioned and I had taken everything away. I stopped feeling. I left myself numb and empty. And so I started thinking, well, how can I feel that again? How can I feel what I've lost? Or can I? And if I can't, then living a life like this isn't worthwhile. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the more personal journey. We've had the setup. This is my fall and rebirth to some extent in this not so heroic journey. Now remember, this is based off my experience. Other people's experience with depression or anxiety or other mental health conditions can be quite different. This is mine, and I share it freely and willingly. Now, I was first diagnosed with depression probably about 5, maybe 10 years ago. Looking back after the diagnosis, you can see how it was, how it had been part of my life. Now, one of the important things to know about a situation like depression is that it doesn't necessarily have to have a big emotional context around it. It can just be a purely metabolic and chemical situation within your brain chemistry. Again, using the science of the physical rather than actually understanding what is really going on. But yeah, so I have been on antidepressants for 10 years now. It's been a mixture and change. I started on citalopram, I then moved to sertraline, and I have recently moved on to mirtazapine. They all have various ups and downs. That's not a joke. They, even though it is kind of now, they have various pros and cons, which I can talk about in more depth later. Now, during, I think it was 2017, yeah, I was in what most people would call the midlife kind of slumpy period. Married, house, etc. Job was a little bit stale, doing bits and bobs here and there, but I was kind of in full, like, what's the point mode? What's the point of this? Just get by, just get through each day, whatever. And then one day, after many months of struggling, my wife came home and told me that it was 95% certain that our marriage wasn't going to work out and that she was a lesbian. And in that moment, I became Ross Geller, pretty much. And I collapsed to the floor. In the middle of cooking, I just couldn't keep going anymore. I collapsed. I made it as far as the bed, and I didn't want to get out. I didn't want to leave the house. I struggled, and I missed my oldest friend's first daughter's naming day ceremony. It's a mouthful, trust me. And I was meant to talk there. I was meant to welcome this new life into the world and to say things, to say, have a good life. It's going to be great. When I didn't want to be part of this world at that point anymore. I wanted none of it. And luckily, I've managed to come back from that now. I spoke at my oldest friend's first son's naming day, and I welcomed him with plenty of 4-letter words. But it's important to realise that trigger moment, that point, it wasn't just my wife I was losing, because relationships do end every day. Like there's a lot of time passed since then, and I'm much better about it all now. But it wasn't just my wife I lost. We had a house together, and that was gone. We had 2 cats together, Sky and Roxy. They were now gone. We were going to grow old together. We were going to have a future. We'd planned kind of what it'd be like to retire. That was gone. And here's the kicker. We were trying to have kids. They were gone. In that moment, all of that, everything that was laid out in front of me, that I wanted, that I planned, that I thought would happen, all of it was gone in that instant. And that is where and how I describe depression. Because depression doesn't just consume the happiness. It doesn't just consume what is the good. It consumes the bad as well. Because it's this heavy, numb, weighty emptiness that you carry with you. And it's there. But it leaves you numb. It leaves you as a husk of a human being when it's at its worst. And when it's at its worst, that's it. There is nothing left. Now, it's important to understand that my ex-wife and I, we are divorced now. The house is sold. Everything's completed. We're actually pretty good friends. We're actually both much happier now because we're more honest with each other, and because we had that conversation, because we spoke honestly. Yes, there was always going to be pain. There is always pain in these situations. But at least in honesty, we have found happiness, and you can't see it at the time, but it is there. So, back to killing myself. I knew I wanted to end my life. I knew I didn't want to be a part of this world anymore. So, what was I going to do? Well, I didn't want to fail. This is the bit that always makes me laugh about this. I didn't want to fail, so I researched loads. I worked out what the best way to do it was, how I could do it the most, how I could do it easily with least chance of failure and least chance of people intervening. But you've also got to remember that there is an incredible amount of shame in reaching this point. So much so that I didn't want to go outside, and I chose the best way to end my life was to hang myself. Now, a lot of people ask me, is it a quick decision? There can be quick decisions, but most of the time, no. Most of the time, you spend your time finding reasons to fight and finding reasons to stay. So when someone reaches a state of this, know that they've been thinking about it, know that they've planned it, that it's not an accident, that it's not a waste. Because lots of people say that's such a waste. But if you don't know what they're feeling, what they're going through, what is happening in their life, because bear in mind, most people don't share in the same level of openness that I do. When they reach that stage, know that there has been thought put behind it, and the idea is to want to prevent them reaching this stage. So, I know now that suicide is selfishly selfless, is how I describe it, because it is a selfish act. It is an act for you because you cannot go through it. You cannot go through with life anymore. However, you convince yourself it's selfless. You convince yourself that the short-term pain people will feel will be of your death will be better than the long-term pain of them suffering whilst you're alive. And that's a horrible place to reach. So what happened? Because I'm still here. I failed. So what happened to save me? And it's not much. So I was in my bedroom. I had my belts ready to hang myself, and then I just got a text message. It's a really simple text message. Now I can't tell you the specifics. Sorry, a little distracted, ending my life. But so it might have been Facebook. It might have been WhatsApp. I don't know the full details, but it was a simple message that just said pub. And context. This is a message from my best friend. Now, she'd had her own struggles the year before. Not like what I was going through this time, but they were significant in her life. And we have a fiercely competitive nature when we're together. And all it was a reminder that we were meant to go to the pub in a few weeks, that we hadn't seen each other in a while. And in that moment, I realised that I was going to lose the competition of life. and she was going to win by default. And you don't let people win by default, do you? So in that instant, when I was at my lowest low, when I had nothing about me, the thought of someone else actually wanting me to be around, even when they'd been through their lowest low, they still wanted me around. That kept me here. And I paused for thought, and I simply replied yes. And so I found a way. Life found a way. And that is my failed attempt. No successful attempts yet. But one thing I do want to say is mental health and anything to do with it is not always about a cure. Lots of people talk about a cure and overcoming it. The issue with talking about that is that it's seen as a fight, and fights have winners and losers. And if you don't win, you lose. And if you lose, you feel bad, which makes things worse. So what I prefer to talk about is I talk about acceptance. Depression is part of my life. I have bad days. I feel down. I feel bad. But I've accepted that. And therefore, when I have a bad day, I know it. And I just say to people, I'm having a bad day. I'm sorry. And I look after myself that way. And then if there is a cure someday, there may be someday, then yeah, maybe I'll consider it. But I don't want to be in that fight, because I don't want to feel like I've lost or not won or just stuck in a perpetual battle to the almost death. I'd rather just accept it and move on. So, what did I do at that point? Well, I decided to... I got through it. I decided that I wanted to help other people that might have been in a similar situation to me. There must be more out there. So I decided to write an article on LinkedIn. It's called Breaking the Stigma. I'm not very imaginative with titles. And it basically said, read this or don't. My name is Andy Solkeld. I'm a chartered accountant, blah, blah, blah. I almost killed myself. I did this not for wanting to cause drama or to do anything special. I simply wanted to do it because I was playing World of Warcraft and I was trying to raise money on a charity stream. I streamed myself live on Twitch. Even got a little Twitch hoodie on. And I thought, you know what? My professional community might donate. I don't do Just Giving kind of LinkedIn, Just Giving races or like walks or anything like that. 3 Peaks, those sorts of things that loads of people do. I do things my way. So I published this, and I expected nothing from it. Maybe a couple of £5-10 donations here and there, and a couple of sorry to hear that, or glad to hear you've made it through. But no, that was not what was going to happen, and I certainly didn't think what happened did. It trended, and hundreds of pounds were raised, more than I ever expected, shared like hundreds, thousands of times, and and then within a day, I was asked if I wanted to talk on World Mental Health Day 2018 and share my story live. So, what's a guy to do who likes talking? I pulled a slide deck together that day. This very slide deck that you are seeing now. This is the same slides that I had then. One edition, well, a couple of editions changes, but this is still the same presentation from then. And I just kept going. I kept telling the story, and people kept wanting to hear it. People kept wanting to see it. That's why I'm doing this now. People still want to hear it. next thing I did was I started raising money through getting tattoos. Now, bear in mind, I hate needles. I hate needles so much that I have fillings done without anaesthetic. Okay? So imagine that drill, that sound that everyone hates. Now imagine no anaesthetic. And if that slips, that's going to hurt. But no anaesthetic. So I started getting, so I raised money to get my first tattoo. It was great. We could get videos or photos, and boy, seeing people in pain or struggling really encourages the internet to donate money. And yeah, so I did that. But then my tattoos started taking on meaning for me, because I almost gave away a lot of my life. People told me I always wore my heart on my sleeve and that it was a weakness. Well, now I wear my heart on my sleeve, and it's my strength, because it's the reason I fight. It's why I'm here. It's what brings me joy, and now I can never forget it because it's always there. So, as we come to the end of Breaking the Stigma, there's a couple of questions people always like to ask me. The most common one is, why? Why do people not want to talk about it? And the honest answer is, people are afraid. People are afraid that saying they have depression, or that they're stressed, or that they're anxious about a decision or struggling will be the end of their career, and that's it. They will be branded as that for their lives, and that will be their lot. Now I can say this, more people have wanted to work with me and have wanted to speak to me and be involved with what I do since I started speaking openly and saying the truth than hiding behind my mask than ever before. Yes, it may be different than what I was doing. They want to speak to me about my experiences, my thoughts, my writing, my talks, and not necessarily about finance and fundraising and anything like that, but they're connected with me emotionally, and that's an important thing. It may not get you the promotion that you want internally. It may not get you the same respect that you expect. But honestly, if you speak honestly and you build a connection on that trust and that real relationship, then it will be more rewarding than anything else. Second thing a lot of people ask me, and this is mainly companies ask me this, is what can they do? How can they help? How can they make their employees feel better? And this comes down to something that I talk about a lot, and I need to write something on this, but basically it's revolution versus evolution. And a lot of this is, how quickly do you want your culture to change? Because if you are happy for a slow culture change, for mental health and well-being to be accepted within your organisation and that to be built as a part of it, evolution is the slow process. So that is, as the old guard, the people who are currently in leadership positions, as they are slowly but surely replaced by the younger generations that are the ones struggling right now. Slowly but surely the culture will change as those younger generations rise to the top. However, if you want revolution requires something different. Revolution requires change at the top, and often this is seen as an overthrowing by the commoners, overthrowing the king or whatever. I don't know much about history, so I'm making it up. But what this requires now, because obviously you're not just going to immediately promote partners, is it requires the people at the top talking, and it requires the people at the top speaking to the younger people in their organisations to say, what could we do better? What are you struggling with right now? Because I want to know. This is where I struggled the most when I was young in my career. This is where I hurt. Because that shows they're empathetic. I think that's the right word. So those are the two ways you can do it, and that is how organisations can grow and can actually help the people that are involved. So here is a final lesson that it took me a while to get to, but it's one that I'm pleased that I found. And this is acceptance. Now, I had placed all my hopes, my dreams, everything about me, I'd placed it in the future. The thing about in the future is between now and then there is risk, and I hadn't appreciated a lot of that risk at the time, and all you're doing by putting it far off in dreams is adding risk, and there is no net present value of happiness or well-being, which means having it now is much better. Yes, in a purely deterministic society where there is no uncertainty and you know every outcome, yes, you can delay your future. You can delay your happiness and well-being till your future. But we don't live in that world. There is risk. So all you're doing, if you're dreaming of becoming a partner, if you're dreaming of making it to the top, you could be working so hard. You could be working tirelessly, endlessly, because we do work hard. We do work tirelessly. And you can make it all the way to the end. You can make it all the way through, and it can be just round the door, and then you can collapse. You don't know what it is. You wake up in hospital wondering, what is it? Well, it's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now. And as life slowly drains from you, knowing that you'll never make partner now, you won't have the happiness you thought that would come with it. As your time passes and your days dwindle, you'll start to think, it won't be about, did you shop more? Did you wish you had more cars? What you'll care about is time, whether you had more time with people. And your final thought will likely be, I wonder whether they actually spotted that typo on page 183 or not. Because life is unfair. Life is inherently unfair. But in that unfairness, you can find joy. There is no deterministic part of life. Just because you have rubbish today doesn't mean you will have rubbish tomorrow. Just because you have a load of lemons, it doesn't mean you have to make lemonade. Because you could just be handed more lemons tomorrow. You could be handed so many lemons that you will never, ever be able to make enough lemonade to get rid of them. And who likes lemonade anyway, really? So just accept it. Learn to love lemons. Because you can always fly closer to the sun. There isn't always pride before a fall. And just because something is shit today does not mean it will be shit tomorrow. It is not guaranteed. Nothing is. So when I say finding your way and accepting your life starts with you, I genuinely mean it. Not everyone needs to follow the journey that I have done. Not everyone needs to stand up and give this talk. Not everyone needs to write a book on it. But if you can find acceptance, and if you can find yourself, that's where it starts. So here are 3 points, 3 really simple points that I want you to take away at the end of this talk. 1, acceptance. Accept who you are. Don't lie and don't pretend to be someone you're not. Because if you're not who you are, then anything you build upon that facade, that fake, is tarnished. Anything built on honesty and trust is built correctly and has a pure foundation. Find your happiness, find what brings you joy, but find it in the present. don't put it all in the future, because anything can happen between now and then. Anything across numerous different decision trees and paths can happen. And finally, and I leave this with you as possibly the most important learning of today, and if the entire world understood it, then 90% of all catastrophes wouldn't have happened, and the only ones remaining would be natural disasters. So please take it with you, live by it, make others live by it. And it is really that simple. Just don't be a dick. So anyway, that is the end of the Breaking the Stigma presentation. We then often go into a Q&A where people will ask me questions. No one ever asks really awkward questions, because I do say it's Ask Me Anything. And if you do an Ask Me Anything on the internet, you pretty much expect weird and wonderful questions to come in. But no one does this in person. Everyone's too embarrassed. I'm not. I will ask, and I will troll to the extreme. And then finally, we close off. No one's ever thrown anything at me, which is surprising, really, given how much rubbish I actually speak, and how often I put this slide up. But no one's thrown anything at me yet. And yeah, that is the end of Breaking the Stigma. And I hope you found it useful. I hope it's been entertaining. I will be doing a few more of these, but in the meantime, thank you very much for tuning in, paying attention, and I will see you all soon. Thank you very much.